So right now we're going to be talking about two different types of chords. We're going to be talking about triads and also seventh chords. Two completely different things. With triads, we're going to be talking about four different types. We're going to be talking about major with a capital M, minor with a lowercase m, augmented with a plus sign, and diminished with a circle. And we're going to talk about major and augmented together and minor and diminished together because that is the way that it makes sense to me. For seventh chords, we're going to be talking about five different kinds. Talk about major seventh, major minor seventh, also known as the dominant. Write that up here. And also we're going to be talking about minor seventh, a diminished seventh, and a half diminished seventh. So these are all the symbols: the major, minor, augmented, diminished, major seventh, major minor seventh, also known as the dominant, minor seventh, diminished seventh, and half diminished seventh, which we are going to cover in this video. So the first type of triad, which we are going to talk about, actually the first types are the major with a capital M and the augmented, actually. I'm going to start with major, but they kind of go together a little bit. So the first step to doing a triad is the basic things go with major. So what I do first is I would draw your staff. You could just pretend that there's a, key signature here. And then I would draw my three notes because a triad is made up of three notes. And I'm going to start on middle C because it's a pretty easy note. So the way that you draw triads on a staff has to be either line, 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 or space, space, space. That way there's the same generic interval between them. And so that's pretty bad drawing, but that's okay. So this is what you have right now. And if you were to play this, it would sound like this. What you have to do for major is the triad has to make up a perfect fifth. And we know the perfect fifth has 7 half steps, right? So we have to somehow add up between these two 7 half steps. And the way that it works for major is between your first note and your second note, you have 4 half steps. And between your second note and your third note, you have 3 half steps. So up here next to major, we can write 4 and 3. It's the way that I think about it. And so when you play this on piano, you're going to start at your bottom note, which in our case is a C, and you're going to go up 4 half steps, which is an E, just like it says here. And then you're going to go up 3 more half steps to find your last note, and that is also the G that is pictured here. So when you play those all together, it gives you a nice, happy, major sounding chord. And this is going to change a little bit when we talk about other examples. So let's take a different example and start on a different note. So again, we'll have our staff and our key signature. Doesn't really matter what it is right now. We're kind of doing this in treble, I guess. So let's say we start on a B this time. So we're starting there. Then we have this one. Wow, I drew those too big. And we have it looking like this, minus this little blurb. And so this starts in a B. And we have to have, remember, 4 half steps, like it says here, between there and 3 here. And so, if we play this on piano, we go the bottom note, which is a B, we play that, and we go 4 half steps up, and that is actually a D sharp. So we need to make this sharp. And the reason that it's D sharp and not E flat is because if it was E flat, this circle, this note would actually have to be up here. And you can't do that because that doesn't work with the triad and the line, 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 space, space, space pattern. So that doesn't work. So it does have to be D sharp. And then from D sharp, you go up another 3 half steps. And that gets you up to an F sharp. So this one also needs to be sharped. And again, it can't be G flat because then you would have to have a note up here. And you can't do that because it doesn't work with the line, 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 space, 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 general form of a triad. And that is how you do major. The next type of triad that we're going to talk about is the augmented, and I actually changed it to work in black so that we could highlight some differences between the augmented and the major, because they really are very alike, and a lot of the chords we're going to base off of major. Augmented is just the most like it, I think. So for a major, you have to add up to a perfect fifth, which is why you have these 7 half steps here. For an augmented, it's a little different. You actually have to add up to an augmented fifth, which means that you actually need 8 half steps between all of your notes instead of 7 like in the major. So we're going to do this a little like major, and we're going to draw out a diagram like that, and we're going to do it starting on middle C again. So here's our staff, and I'm just going to make this treble clef because why not? And so I'm going to start on middle C because it's a pretty basic one. And again, you draw your 3 notes. So we'll go line, 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 because it always has to be line, line, line. And then the way that augmented goes is just like major. It has 4 half steps between the first note and the second note. However, the difference is because it has to add up to 8 half steps instead of 7, here, instead of being 3 half steps, it's actually 4 again. So up here, we're just going to write 4, 4. And this gives you that extra little half step at the end to make it augmented. So the way that we do this is, again, we start with middle C on piano, and we go up 4 half steps, which is the E that we see here. And then from the E, we go up another 4 half steps, which is actually a G sharp. So this needs to be sharp. Again, I explained this in the major video, or in the major clip, but it cannot be A flat, because if it was A flat, you would have to have this note be here and flat this note, but that doesn't go with the line, 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 space, space, space pattern. It breaks the pattern, so we can't use it. Music is all about patterns. So this would be your augmented chord with those 4 half steps in between each note. If we try a different example, we can look at it in a new way. So let's go draw our staff again, and let's actually do a, wow, that was backward. Wow, that was bad. Try that again. That's better. Okay, so we will actually start on a line, or on a space this time, because we've been doing all lines so far. So we'll start here, and we'll draw one on each of our lines going up. Those are all on lines, I promise. And again, we have to have 4 half steps between this F and this A, and 4 between the A and the C. So let's see if we need any accidentals in this. We start on the F, and we're going to go up 4 half steps. And that is the A that is pictured there. So we're good there. We don't need any accidentals. From the A, we have to go up another 4 half steps. And that is actually a C sharp. So this note has to be sharp. And that would be your augmented triad. So that's how you do that one. Alright, so now we have finished with major, and we had augmented up here. I erased it, and now we're going to cover minor, which is with a little m. It's a little hard to tell the difference, but you can just kind of picture it. This one's a little more curvy than that one. And the reason I left the major up is because a minor is very similar to major. Again, all of them kind of go back to major, except I think diminished is more like minor. So, a minor also has to add up to a perfect fifth. So we know that there's going to be 7 half steps again. And so we know that the half steps between the notes are going to have to add up to 7 again. So we are going to do this the same way that we've done the other ones. And we'll just start on middle C down here. And we do our line, line, line. We just draw out our chord like that, always to start out with. The way it goes for minor is you actually have 3 half steps between the first and the second. And then to make 7, obviously you have 4 here. So it's the opposite of major. You have 3, 4. So you can remember that those are flip-flopped. And then the same thing we have to do with this one is play it and make sure we don't need any accidentals. So we'll start on the C, and we'll go up 3 half steps this time, which is actually an E flat. So this needs to be flat. And we know that it's flat and not a D sharp because then we would have to have a note on this space in here, and that doesn't follow the line, line, line pattern. So we have to put a flat here, and then from that flat, from that E flat, we have to go up 4 half steps, which takes you back to this G, and there's no accidentals on that. So this would be your minor chord with a, this would be your C minor chord. Just keep this lovely staff that I drew ahead of time. Just go ahead and use it again. Recycling staffs. Okay. And we will try it on a different note. So this time we'll try it on an A. We'll do some line, line, line. So A, C, and E. And you again need 3 here and 4 here. And those are half steps. So start on the A, and you go up 3 half steps, which is the C that is pictured there. So that is correct. And then you go up 4 half steps, and that is the E that is pictured there. So this is already right for an A minor chord. And that's minors in a nutshell. So now that we've talked about augmented, major, and minor, we are going to talk about diminished, which I erased the major part of the board because I think the diminished are more like minor, and it's easier for me to go off of minor. So this one is a little trickier, but it's pretty easy to get the hang of if you have minors down. So we write this one with a circle, like a degree sign, in front of the note. And so this one, instead of adding up to a perfect fifth, like the minor and the major, actually adds up to a diminished fifth. Kind of like how the augmented adds up to an augmented fifth. They're all fifths because they're triads. And in a diminished fifth, we know that we actually have 6 half steps that we have to incorporate to actually make it a diminished fifth. So instead of breaking this up into 3 and 4, we're going to have to break this up into something different to add up to 6. So the way that diminished goes, go ahead and draw this. It's pretty bad, but that's okay. So again, we just do the same thing to start out with for each one. And we're going to just start on C because it's a pretty easy note. Those diagrams are terrible, but that's okay. This doesn't exist. Alright, so you have your 3-ish notes. And again, what we're going to do is just write those out beforehand. Line, 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 space, space, space. Never changes. For diminished, however, it's 3 and that's a 3. So we have 3 half steps between the first note and the second note, and 3 from the second note to the third note. We'll just write that up here. 3, 3. Good way to remember. So again, we play this on piano. We go to middle C, which is where our first note is. That's our bass note here. We play middle C, and then we go up 3 half steps, and that is a E flat. So we need to draw in a flat here. Wow, my drawing skills in this one are not very good. And then from that E flat, we have to go up 3 more half steps. And that is a G flat. It's a G because this is what is drawn here, so it needs to be flattened. And that would be your diminished, your C diminished. We can do a different example, maybe with a little better drawing skills. Make it a little more clear. Try to make the staff a little bigger. That's a lot better. Okay. And we can start on, let's say a G. We haven't started on a G yet. Okay, so we start on a G. This note, play it on piano. And we go up 3 half steps here, which is a B flat. This note is your B, so we go to a flat. And then 3 more half steps from this B flat to a D flat, because D is your note here, and then it has to be flattened. So this would be your G diminished. That's basically diminished in a nutshell. Another way that you can think about it, if you don't like doing the 3 and 3 so much, is you can take a minor and just drop the last note down a half step. So if you were playing a minor and you needed to make it a diminished, all you would do is take the last note and bring it down a half step. You can see this if you have a C minor. And then to make it a C diminished, you just drop that G down to a G flat. And that makes it diminished automatically. It's just another way to think about it if you're playing piano and need it off the top of your head and don't want to count half steps. That is basically your triads in a nutshell. Alright, the last thing we'll do with triads is just a quick review since we've learned how to do all of them now. And so we remember we have the 4 types. We have major, we have minor, we have augmented, and we have diminished. Make a little chart, make it super easy. This line should not be here. That makes it really uneven. That's better. Alright, so for major and minor, we have to add up to a perfect fifth. That's a 5, I promise. Get less weird. And that means it needs 7 half steps. Wow, can't write. And for major, we go 4 half steps to 3 half steps. And for minor, we go 3 half steps to 4 half steps. Remember, we always write it out as our 3 notes, either line, 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 space, 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 and then add in our accidentals afterward. I'm going to write that up here, line, 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 or space, space, space. Always has to be like that, no exceptions. And then for our augmented, it has to add up to an augmented fifth, which means it actually needs 8 half steps. And we're going to go 4 half steps plus 4 half steps to make that 8. And with diminished, we have to add up to a diminished fifth, which means we need 6 half steps. And that means we go 3 half steps to 3 half steps. It's just a little overview to make triads maybe a little more clear to us. And that is triads in a nutshell, basically what you need to know. The one last thing that we're going to do with triads is actually listen to how they sound. So we're going to just go through each one. We'll start with major. And so we'll just go C major, because we'll just do all these on C. So C major sounds a little like that. C minor sounds like this. C augmented sounds like this. And C diminished sounds like this. So these sound a little more ominous. Major is typically what we think to be a good sounding kind of chord, and minor is what we used in sadder songs. And then these can be used in creepier songs to give a sort of different feel to it. And that's all about triads. The next big chunk of section that we're going to learn about is seventh chords. And unlike how in triads there were 4 types, there's actually 5 types. And seventh chords are a little bit trickier, but they get easier once you do them. For seventh chords, we have 5 different types, and each symbol is followed by a 7. So we have major 7, which we already know is a capital M. That's 7. We have what is called the dominant 7th. It's also called the major minor 7th. So for writing purposes, I'm going to write the major minor symbol, but know that it is actually the same as a dominant. It has 2 different names. I guess dominant sounds a little more fancy than just saying major minor because you're combining major and minor, and we'll get to that in a little bit. The next one is a minor 7th. I like to draw my 7s big on that so you can tell it's a small m. And then your last 2 are related, and you have a half diminished 7th. That's a circle with a line through it. Looks like multiple lines and multiple circles, but it's just a circle with a line. That's better. And the other last type is just a fully diminished 7th, which is just an open circle instead of the cut circle, which means half diminished because you're cutting the circle in half. Good way to remember it. So we're going to dive right in, and we're going to start with major 7th chords. So the first type of 7th chord that we're going to talk about is a major 7th, and one thing that you should definitely know about 7th chords is that they are made up of 2 parts. You have a triad in the bottom and then a 7th over the entire chord. But we're going to do this just like we've been doing with all of the other chords, and we're going to just start with a staff. I'll try to make this one big enough. That seems to be a recurring issue. Okay, so here's your staff. And a terrible treble clef. So one of the main differences between 7th chords and triads is 7th chords actually have 4 notes instead of 3 like in triads. Because you think like tri, 3, 7ths actually have 4. Which sounds weird. You would think they might have 7, but they actually have 4. So the way that we're going to do this is like we've been doing all the other ones. We're just going to draw it out first. So we're going to start on middle C like we have been doing for all the others, because middle C is a very good note to start on. And the way that we're going to do this is you kind of have to know your triads pretty well at this point. So if you're confused, just go back in the video and watch that explanation for each different triad over again, the ones that we talk about. We actually won't talk about augmented triads, so if that's the one you were confused on, Saved by the Bell. The first part that we're going to talk about is we're going to break it up with these 3 notes. And this is our bottom triad, so just ignore this top note for a second. And for a major 7th chord, this has to be a major triad. So this has to have 4 half steps, and this has to have 3. We already talked about that. It's already pretty familiar. This should be the easy part. The next part is looking at this top note. And the way that I do it is I always look at this top note from reference of the bottom note. So we're going to go here to here. Okay? And so in a major 7th, not only do you have a major triad on the bottom, but you also have a major 7th interval from the bottom note to the top note, which means you have 11 half steps. You'll remember that from the interval lesson. And so, when we play this on the piano, we'll make sure we don't need any accidentals or add any accidentals that we do need. But just to write out as a little hint, cheat sheet, we have a major, for a major 7th, we have a major triad, and a major, can't spell, 7th, which is 11 half steps, which we already wrote over there, but we'll just put it over there. So this is the big idea of a major 7th chord. So what we will do is we will start on middle C, and we'll go up our 4 half steps, and that is the E that is pictured here, so that's correct, and then our 3 half steps, and that is also the G that is pictured here, so there's our major triad in the bottom. And then from here to here we should have 11 half steps. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play C, and then I'm going to count, because that's how I do it. And I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And that gives you a B, and that is what is written there. So you don't need any accidentals. And if you were to play this, that's how it would sound. And that is how you would do a major 7th. We can try a different example. Using these rules. They will always apply for every major 7th. So we will start on an E, because why not? And remember, you go always, this one, you have to do like 4. Line, 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 space, 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 space. Yes? Okay. So here's our line, 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 line. This is the one we're using for this. And we, remember, have to go 4 from here to here, 3 from here to here to make it a major triad. From here to here, 11 half steps to make it a major 7th interval, or just a 7th interval. Yeah, major 7th interval. So we're going to start on this E, and we will go up 4 half steps, which is actually a G sharp, so we need a sharp here. And from that G sharp, we go 3 more half steps, which gets you to the B that is pictured here. And then we're going to go back to the bass, this note, the note at the bottom, and go up 11 half steps from there. So we start on an E, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is a D, but what I am playing right now is a D sharp. So it has to be written like that. And if you were to play this, you would get something that sounds a little like this, which sounds weird and majestical at the same time. That's kind of just how music is. So this is how you do major 7th chords. If you carefully watched the major 7th tutorial, the major minor 7th should go a lot easier for you, because it's going to make a whole lot more sense now. All of these will. So a major minor 7th is basically kind of the same as its name. Also, it's called a dominant. For writing's sake, I'm calling it major minor 7th. So it has a major triad in the bottom with a minor 7th from the bass to the top note, your 4th note. So this means you actually have to go 10 half steps instead of 11, like the last one. So again, we're going to start on middle C, go here, 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 line, 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 line. And then we are going to go major here, 4, minor here, 3. And then from here to here, we should have 10 half steps. Okay, so when we play this on piano, start at C, we go up to 4 half steps to that E, we go up another 3 half steps to the G, and then we go up 10 half steps from the bass note from that C, and you don't include the C. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and that actually gets you to a B flat. So this note has to be flattened. It's actually on the line. And that would be your major minor 7th for a C. Pretty easy. We can do one more quick example. I think this one's pretty self-explanatory if you watched the other video. Let's draw our staff lines out again. Wish I could take viewer suggestions on what note to start on because I'm running out of creativity. We will start on an F, A, C, E, 4, 3, 10. Okay, so start on the F, 4 half steps, 3 half steps, no accidentals on any one of those, and then from the F, you go 10 half steps, and this note is an E, but I'm actually playing an E flat, so that needs to be flattened, and that is how you do it for F. And now you can do it for any notes you want, as long as they are line, 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 or space, 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 space. Awesome. Great. We are going to breeze super quickly through the minor 7th because it's, if you watch the last two, it's really self-explanatory. So a minor 7th, you have a minor triad. I obviously can't write. A minor triad in the bottom, and a minor 7th from your bass notes to your top note, which means again you need 10 half steps. So we will do like we have been, start on C, do all of these. This you actually need 3 because it's a minor triad. From here to here you need 10. The difference with this one and the major minor is that the triad on the bottom is actually a minor instead of a major, so you have 3 and then 4 instead of 4 and then 3. So we will do this like we have been. Go from the C, 3 half steps. That's an E flat, so we will flatten that. From that E flat, go 4 half steps. That gets to a G, like it's already written there. And then go back to the C and go up 10 half steps. And that gets you to a B flat. Like that. That would be your C minor 7th. We can try one more example super quick, but I think 7ths are pretty self-explanatory now. So we will just breeze on by. Super weird talking. Okay. We will start on an E, because why not? E's are fun. 3, 4, 10. Just remember those intervals and you'll be fine. Remember, those are all half steps. So, E, 3 half steps. You get to a, what is that, a G? Yep, that's a G. 4 half steps. Get to a B. Go back to the E. Go up 10 half steps. And that gets you to a D, which is what's already written there. So this is just what it is for a C minor 7th, without all my numbers and arrows that don't look like arrows. And that's pretty basic and easy. That's how you do a minor 7th. For half diminished 7th and diminished 7th, we're going to cover these pretty much the same. They're very similar. There's only one difference between them. So you have to have that triad in the bass, and for these, both of these have a diminished triad. In the bottom. And so we know that that is 3, 3. The difference between these two is that a half diminished 7th is only, it's like a faker diminished. It actually doesn't have a diminished 7th, it has a minor 7th for its interval from the bass note to your top note. A diminished 7th is fully diminished though, and has a diminished 7th as its interval from the bass note to the top note, the 4th note. So I think we could do this pretty quickly, actually. We'll just do a big staff here in the middle. Keep it in treble clef because that's pretty easy to read. Bad treble clef, that's okay. And so we will start with the half diminished seventh. Start from a C, like always. And so diminished triad, so this has to be 3, this has to be 3, and this, because it's a minor seventh, has to be 10 half steps again. Just like in your major minor and your minor seventh chords. So then we play this and make sure all of our intervals are right. So 3 from a C, here's a C. 3 half steps gets you to an E flat, so this needs to be flattened. From that E flat, you go another 3 half steps. That gets you to a G flat. And then from your bass note, you're going to go up 10 half steps. So from the C, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that gets you to a B flat. So these 3 are all flattened. And that is how you do a minor or a half diminished seventh. The way you would do a fully diminished seventh, these are the big names, these are notes, is instead of this being 10 half steps, you actually have, we'll erase this, you actually have a diminished seventh. So that's 9 half steps, just going down 1 step each time. You know that from the interval unit. So we already have these because it's the same diminished triad in the bottom. So from your C to your top note, you're going to go 9 half steps this time. So here's your C and 9 half steps. And that actually is on the note A. The problem is you can't draw an A because that would go here and that would break the line, 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 space, 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 space pattern. So we actually have to make this a double flat. So 2 little B's. It's kind of weird, but it has to follow this pattern to be correct. So that's how we do that one. And that's basically how you do diminished and half diminished in a nutshell. You just have to remember which triad goes with which seventh and which seventh is the interval from the bass note to the top note. So those ones are pretty similar. So to wrap this up, we're going to do a really quick review of seventh chords and just remind what we have there. So the first one we have is a major seventh. Can't see my red marker. Major seventh. And then you have the major minor seventh, also known as the dominant seventh. You have the minor seventh. You have the half diminished seventh and the diminished seventh. Major seventh has a major triad with a major seventh. We'll do this like this. Make a little chart like we did last time. Okay. A major minor seventh or a dominant seventh has a major triad with a minor seventh. A minor seventh has a minor triad with a minor seventh. A half diminished seventh has a diminished triad with a minor seventh. And a diminished seventh has a diminished triad, like the half diminished seventh, but with also a diminished seventh. And that is making triads and seventh chords in a nutshell.